One of the main takeaways for the Leafs over the last few weeks has been the large amount of change that have been going on, specifically in relation to the lineups. It's no secret that Keefe has been using the blender quite a bit over the last few weeks to try and get some change, and I know that it has caused a bit of unrest, a bit of confusion, a bit of upset, a bit of anger, but there is motive behind what Keefe has been doing. It's not to be alarmed. He's not trying to derail the team or screw them over. There's a reason why he's doing it. So the changes that have been made are spreading out Nylander, Matthews, and Marner throughout all three of the first lines. And when he was asked about it originally, he said that he just wants to make sure that the talent is spread and that those guys, speaking towards Nylander, Matthews, and Marner, can play on any line, making sure that they are able to play anywhere and that the rest of the team being moved up in the lineup can play on those lines too. So again, going for that versatility, just making sure that if he ever needs to put Mikheyev on the first line, if he ever needs to put Kasha on the first line, if he ever needs to put Marner on the third line, second line, Nylander on the third line, second line, whatever. If he ever needs to move people because someone is on a cold streak, because someone's not performing, or because someone's performing exceptionally well, if that ever happens where he needs to make that sort of change, he wants to make sure that he can do so. And he wants to do that in advance because he wants to make sure that, let's say in the week before the playoffs, for example, or even during the playoffs, someone goes cold, moving the line for the first time in the playoffs is not something you want to have to do because, I mean, they're grown men, they're professional hockey players. Obviously, they'll make it work, but you can make it work so much better by practicing those situations in game earlier in the season. So that's what he's trying to do, because if you switch a cold player out in the playoffs and you start using the blender in the playoffs, not having done it before, yeah, they'll have chemistry, they'll be able to connect passes, they'll be able to score goals, but it can be so much more effective if they have practice, proper in-game practice playing that way during the season. And that's what he means when he wants to make sure that guys can move up and down. Now, we know by now that these changes did end up going back to normal. Midway through the game against the Red Wings, I believe it was, he ended up changing everything back to the normal makeup of the lineup. I think the experiment is over. I think it's safe to say that he got what he needed. He saw what he needed to see in those few games that the lineup changed. I think the experiment's over for now. He might try it again down the road. I think he just wants to start the second half of the season strong after the All-Star break. You know, get something going, start strong, and then he might try it again. And maybe mid-March, end of March, he might try it again for a couple games. Obviously not too late because then you can get too close to the playoffs. But I would look at around mid-March. He might try it again once they lay a proper foundation for the start of the second half of the season. Now, what I think about this. So at first, I didn't like it because I didn't think it was going to last with having someone like Nylander on the third line when his talent is definitely top two line worthy. I mean, when I saw Nylander's name on the third line, I was like, what is Keefe doing? What's going on here? But then I thought about it a bit more. And it's the same thing that I was saying in my last podcast episode when I was talking about Keefe letting Kampf take that face-off in our zone with like 5 seconds left, and Keefe putting someone like Liljegren out instead of the top D guys in crucial situations. You know, putting these lower line guys, lower skill caliber guys on in crucial situations rather than putting on the sure thing, the top guys. That's what I had talked about previously. It's the same thing. He's making sure that his team is versatile and that they are able to move around and shift around for real, like in real game situations, not in practice situations, because like you've heard me say before, it's nowhere near the same thing. So not just having one or two guys like Keefe and Bunting, because those, I would say, are the two guys that can play on several lines, that Keefe and Bunting are The only two guys that are considered extremely versatile and you can literally pick them off and put them anywhere and they will perform exactly the same. They will have the same impact anywhere they're placed on the lines. It's which other players can benefit most from them. So, like, for example, right now, Matthews and Marner are benefiting the most from having Bunting there, and Nylander and Tavares are benefiting the most. Well, I mean, they're kind of cold right now, but they normally benefit the most from having someone like Kerfoot there. So, these guys are versatile. Anyone that needs them, they can be picked off and put right next to those guys, and they will perform exactly the same. Now, I mean, you need really versatile guys like that, but you need multiple of those guys. You need to be versatile as an entire team, not just having the one or two guys that are considered to be versatile. Making sure that each guy can play with every single possible pairing in that lineup. And that's what those few games were when Keefe switched the lines up. And he is being, a lot of people were very alarmed, but he's being preventative. And that's what we've been missing. That's what we missed last season, because when all of our guys went cold in the playoffs, we weren't prepared. We didn't have any solution to it. I mean, yeah, I even spoke about how versatile our team was last season, but I didn't realize that we had never actually tested it out. We had never actually tested out the versatility of our team last season before the playoffs. That's what we're doing now, because now, especially having it done before the trade deadline, that is huge. And I don't think that was a mistake. Keep doing this before the trade deadline and kind of seeing what their options were. That's definitely something that him and Dubas discussed, because now they know. Now they have a clearer picture of what different guys can do. If certain guys are useless other than where they currently are, maybe that's someone that you need to move. You look at someone like Richie. Other than being on the fourth line, he's pretty much useless compared to the other guys that we have. So you pick someone like him, maybe that's someone we can move. Or someone like Engvall. For me, other than the fourth line, maybe the third, but looking at Mikheyev coming back now, I don't think Engvall has a place on the third line. He's pretty much useless other than being on that fourth line. Maybe he's someone that can be moved. So it really opened up a lot of doors, and it made them see a lot of things, and not just with the forwards, with the defense as well. They've been shifting a lot too. Obviously not as much because they don't have as much room to move around. There's not as many guys, only the three pairings. So, but they've been doing it there too. And it's really important to have it done before the trade deadline. But I mean, it's not like it was horrible. We still escaped with wins. We still got all those wins. They weren't the cleanest wins we've ever seen, but at least Keefe now knows they work if need be. Not 100%, but like I said at the beginning of this video, the fact that they didn't work 100% then just means that with that in-game practice that they got, they will be that much closer to performing at 100% if they need to go back to those lines eventually. Whereas if this never happened and these line changes never happened and they needed it and they ended up changing the lines further down the road, they wouldn't be as effective as they will be if they have to change them later on, because they already have that in-game practice playing, in-game playing time with each other. And now Keefe knows he has versatility, perhaps even more so than in previous seasons, which I've been talking about the last couple weeks, and how Keefe is placing guys on all lines in all types of crucial situations. Doesn't matter if it's a face-off in the defensive zone with 5 seconds left. It's not necessarily going to be Spezza, Tavares, or Matthews that are going out there. It might be Kerfoot or whoever he put on the last time, or Kampf that he put on the last time. And that's really, and like, I can't stress how important that is, because it helps them develop for the playoffs, get ready for the playoffs and the race before the playoffs when it starts to get a lot tighter, to ensure that they can all do pretty much everything. Yeah, they still have their designated roles on the team, but it's a just in case, because if any previous seasons indicate anything, we know that it is 100% possible for our top guys to go cold, and that's when changes like this are going to be needed. And again, it's a good thing, because It's just going to be that much more effective because they've already had the practice in the regular season. And it also shows an element of trust, which is also really important. I know people hate talking about the intangible stuff. They just like talking about the hard, tangible, like skills and actual performance on ice. But I'm going to talk about this for a sec because it shows how much trust Keefe has in his players and how much trust the players have in Keefe. And I know Keefe has done this before in past seasons. He's infamous for using the blender to try and shake things up when they're not working. But the difference here is the reason that he's doing it. It's not to shake things up because we were working fine. We had built a foundation of winning and they had been riding it along for quite a while, pretty much all season. So it wasn't to shake things up because it was working great. It's to prepare them for later in the season when the game starts to change. And when I say the game starts to change, we know that hockey in the playoffs is a totally different beast, and the race right before is a totally different beast. The game just naturally changes. And also to prepare them for when one of them gets into a cold spell or, God forbid, an injury happens and all that stuff that we know, that we have experienced that can happen. And I like that Keefe is willing to try these things out and experiment. And earlier in the season is definitely better than waiting until last minute when there isn't any time to prepare or try things out just to see if they work or to get different guys and different types of playing time, different lines, different units. Towards the end of the season, there's no time for that. You can't risk just changing things for the hell of it when you're in a playoff race towards the end of the season. That's why it's important that it happened before the second half, because now the race is going to start heating up. And now we kind of need to be set in our ways. Like I said, it might happen again, like in the middle of March once more. But other than that, it's pretty set. So I don't mind even if it happens a few more times this season, which I think it will. And especially with a busy February. All Canadian teams have a really busy February. So we might need to swap people in here and there, but as long as he resorts back to the usual lines, which I think he will, I am happy with it because those lines are the ones that fit best. They work best, but again, it shows that element of trust because, like I said, he did do it not to shake things up. He did it while we were in a winning mindset. We were on streaks of winning and scoring high-scoring games and all that stuff. So he had trust to, he didn't know what was going to happen. He could have changed all these lines and then we could have went on a huge losing streak. So it shows the trust that he has in these players to trust that if he were to change the lines, they wouldn't lose that winning foundation. They wouldn't lose that winning atmosphere that they had built so far up to that point in the season. He trusted that they'd be okay, that they'd be able to handle themselves. And again, putting them in those crucial situations when normally they wouldn't be for those kinds of players like Keefe or Liljegren. Again, that keeps building that element of trust, which is huge. And honestly, the fact that Keefe just tried those lines for a couple games and then he switched back, it shows that he's not trying to force anything permanently. He's literally just getting that real game time in. And like I've been saying, it's all about the preparation and it's just super important. I'm not going to repeat I could just keep going on and I'll just keep repeating myself, but it's all about the preparation, and that is really important to see from someone like Keefe.